This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Hello, everybody. I want to welcome you guys back to another episode of the GSMC Sports Podcast presented by GSMC Podcast Network. My name is Chris Blades, and as always, I would like to remind you guys, if you haven't already, to subscribe to the podcast. Make sure you're always on top whenever we're dropping stuff. Make sure you never miss an episode. If you can, please give us a 5-star rating and review. It is very helpful. Allows us to see what you guys like, don't like, all that fun stuff. If you're on social media, we are also on social media, so you can find us there. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. We can talk, we can chat, we can debate. All that fun stuff that people use social media for. So I wanted to start here today. This wasn't what I planned on talking about first, but after seeing this, I wanted to discuss it with you all. So what we're going to talk about first is the MLB Hall of Fame ballot. Came out tonight. I'm recording this on Tuesday night, so it came out tonight. If you are hearing this, you already know who's on the ballot, and those two people, only two, would be Derek Jeter and Larry Walker. Now, Derek Jeter was more or less a shoo-in. Obviously everybody knew he was going to get in the Hall of Fame. It was just depending on how much of the vote he got. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. Larry Walker was a bit of a surprise. He was, I believe, I was watching SVP tonight, and he said that I think he was the 7th person ever to make it in on the final year of their ballot, because obviously in baseball you're allowed to be on the ballot for 10 years. And he made it in on his 10th year of eligibility, which is pretty impressive. Just because, obviously, when you go on that long, you kind of worry, or I would worry if I were a player, if I was ever going to get in. So that is definitely it was definitely good for him. And then also, I think he also believe he had the highest jump of any player to get in on his 7th. Not on his 7th, on his of the 7 to get in on their 10th year of eligibility. So that's great. He had a very good career, obviously. Unfortunately for him, he played with the Rockies, so that was held against him just because, Coors Field, the high altitude, it's easier to hit, all that fun stuff. I believe he hit, 381 there? He hit 381 over his career at Coors Field as opposed to 282 everywhere else, so I know that was held against him for a while. But obviously it's great for him to get in. I believe he was the first Rocky to ever get in as well, so that's a good... it's good to get the ball rolling for them, as opposed to, you have guys like Arenado coming up who should be a Hall of Famer. He's already won, I believe, like 7 Gold Gloves or something. He has great power numbers. Obviously, again, he plays at Coors Field, so in theory, it's easier to hit. But you still got to make contact, still got to put the bat on the ball. So I would never hold that against the guy just by where he got drafted or where he decided to sign. That's not necessarily, it's not his fault. But Larry Walker had a great career. I believe he's the first Canadian position player as well to get into the Hall of Fame, so it's definitely big for his home country and everything. And then obviously on the Derek Jeter side, he was a guy who, like I said, we knew he was going to get in, just wasn't sure if it was going to be unanimous or not. It actually was not, which will cause some stir on social media, and as it should have. So as of right now, I'm pretty sure, but I think the only player to ever get voted in unanimously is Mariano Rivera when he did it last year, which, if you think about the history of baseball and all the great players that have gone through, is a little surprising. Not that necessarily that Mariano was the first, but, not that Mariano was unanimous, but that he was, in fact, the first. When you think about Ken Griffey Jr. wasn't first ballot. I mean, I'm looking at the highest percentage of Hall of Fame votes received, and like I said, Mariano had the most. Derek Jeter was second with 99.7. He missed it by 1 vote. Ken Griffey Jr. missed it by 3 votes, I believe, and then Tom Seaver and Nolan Ryan round up the top 5 as opposed in terms of the highest percentage of Hall of Fame votes received. And you look at all 5 of those names. Those are guys that clearly, like very clearly, are Hall of Fame players. So you would think that, like, oh, okay, someone else should have been first ballot. I mean, you have guys going. I mean, just like I'm saying, those are 5 of the highest. So you're not even talking about the Willie Mays, Hank Aaron's, Mickey Mantle's, some other great players that have come even before them that didn't get that much of the vote. So it's just the voting system for Hall of Fames is very flawed. We'll touch on that in the next segment on what some things I would change. But like I said, long story short, the fact that Derek Jeter was not a unanimous decision was pretty shocking to me. Especially, like I said, if you missed it out on a couple votes, all right, that's whatever. But to miss it out on 1 vote, I know. Obviously, he doesn't care. He's in the Hall of Fame. He didn't really. He said even to be able to get that many people to agree on it was great for him. But just when you think about it in terms of, like I said, 1 vote from being the second, that would have. I mean, it would have been cool for him, but obviously now he just joins. Now he just has the highest percentage of votes received for someone that wasn't unanimous. So I guess that's pretty good too. I imagine he will be able to live with that. So those are 2 that made it. The guys that didn't, that were the closest at least, were Curt Schilling, I believe, had one of the higher jumps in terms of percentage jump. He jumped up to 70% around there, and he's a guy that I think this is his 8th year of eligibility. I'm pretty sure. And I mean, he's had some off the field stuff, obviously off the field, but like since he retired, he's said some things, done some things that have caused a little bit of a stir on social media. So I know that isn't at the very least helping his resume, his Hall of Fame resume, even though he had a great career, won 20 or more games 3 times during his career. Played with 5 different teams, finished second in the Cy Young balloting 3 times, twice was in the top 10 of MVP voting, and he was obviously great in the postseason for a couple of different World Series teams. So, I mean, he's a guy that'd be interesting to see how that kind of pans out next year. And then obviously the 2 big guys, the 2 names that kind of everybody's kind of wait to see will they or won't they ever get in, is Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens, 2 guys who obviously who came up and played during the steroid era, were rife with controversy in terms of that. I mean, obviously I know with Bonds, Clemens too has the case as one of the better pitchers to ever play. But I mean, you could, from Bonds' perspective, he's probably, in my own personal opinion, and I'm biased just because I was a fan of the home run as a kid, so he was the guy. But yeah, he's probably the best power hitter ever. And I mean, even if you want to take that part of it away, his San Francisco, his later part of his career away, even through his career with the Pirates, and up until when he may or may not have dabbled with that kind of stuff, if you will, you could argue that the numbers he put up were already Hall of Fame caliber by then. So the fact that he hasn't got in is definitely a little interesting. And also, I mean, just on top of the fact that, like, comparatively to the other guys in that steroid era and their level of play, he was obviously far better than all of those guys. So that's a different thing. I know obviously Barry Bonds is a hotly debated person when it comes to the Hall of Fame, because in theory you can't have a Hall of Fame without arguably the best power hitter in the history of the game. Whether you believe it or not, I mean, the numbers, he obviously has the most home runs. Some of them may have been cheating, some of them may have not been. We really will never know unless he comes out and publicly says it, and at this point I doubt he ever will. So yeah, there's that. But also just the fact that and this is always my thing with steroids, is that even if you, in theory, can hit the ball better, recover from injuries better, a bit stronger, can hit it farther, not better, but hit it farther, stuff like that, you still have to put the bat on the ball. Now, anybody that's watched baseball, anybody that has played baseball, knows how difficult it is to hit a ball square and out of the park. And Barry Bonds was the example of a guy that could do that better than anyone, on top of the fact that he was getting probably at best like one pitch to hit a game. Max two, but most of the games was probably one. And he was still finding a way to hit home runs that way. And then obviously when he didn't, he would just take his walks. I mean, if you look at some of his walk numbers later in his career with San Francisco, I mean, they were just absolutely absurd. And he was still hitting good for average and for power. So it's just, I'm saying he's an interesting one. Him and Clemens will be interesting to see, because if they get in, then that kind of opens the floodgates a little bit in terms of the other steroids guys. There's steroids guys that may have a chance. Obviously, they were probably the two best in terms of the best pitcher and the best hitter to be wrapped up with that steroid controversy. But at the same time, if they get in, then that might help guys later on down the line. Maybe like I know Alex Rodriguez is going to be up in a couple years. I mean, he got caught twice, I believe, with steroids. So it's a bit different than Bonds, but again, he was a great player before that stuff, and obviously that just helped him. I mean, David Ortiz, another one that's going to be up to enter the ballot a couple years. So if they have to see how these guys treat Clemens and Bonds, just because if they get in, even if it's on the last year of their eligibility, if they get in, and that'll help their case. If they don't, then it's hard to argue that A-Rod should be in the Hall of Fame if Barry Bonds isn't, because Barry Bonds was a better player than he was. Just point blank, period. Steroids, no steroids. He was a better player than he was. So it'd be hard pressed to believe. And then also, from my perspective, I mean, again, I'm just one person. But when you're having, the Hall of Fame is supposed to be the best players to encapsulate, like the best players to ever play your game. And a Hall of Fame without the best power hitter ever seems a bit faulty to me. Like, it's just hard to, even I'm saying the alleged use, again, was never officially caught. Did he get bigger at the end of his career? Yes. So it's probable that he did, but due to the fact that he was never officially caught, and obviously he's never going to admit it now. I mean, the one guy went to jail for Barry. But yeah, so it's just hard. I'm hard pressed to believe that you can have a Hall of Fame without Barry Bonds in it. So that is interesting, and we will see how that goes from there. But yeah, no, congrats to Derek Jeter, congrats to Ariel Walker, both guys that deserve to get in, and they did. So I mean, obviously it's a great night for them, great night for their families, great night for the teams that they played for. So that's fun. But after this, we are going to talk about the flaws that I see, and not just baseball Hall of Fame voting. It's in basketball, it's in football too. Just the flaws I see in the Hall of Fame voting process, and how I would try to fix it. I mean, there's no there's no fix all for these issues that they have, but these are some of the suggestions that I would give to the people in charge to how I would get the All-Star voting up to where it's at least more. It's a little bit more respected by the fans and stuff. So we'll talk about that right after this break.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Fame voting. Now, as we talked about in the last segment, Derek Jeter was one vote away from being a unanimous selection into the Baseball Hall of Fame. Now, I don't believe we know. I'm going to double check for you guys, but I don't believe we know who that one voter is because not all the votes have been released yet. But to that one voter who didn't vote Derek Jeter in unanimously, you would have to imagine that that guy should have his vote taken away. Because, I mean, I understand that maybe he's going to make the case that, he never won an MVP. I mean, that's really the only case. That's really the only thing that's not as legit, just not having an MVP. And, maybe you could say, other guys are better offensively than him, other guys are better defensively than him. But, I mean, five World Series, Mr. November, over 300 career hitter, got over 3,000 hits. And, I mean, some of that, obviously, is longevity. To a degree, played 20 years, I believe. But outside of that, he has the numbers back it up. Hit great in the postseason. Obviously, the Mr. November thing has moments, and that's the biggest thing about Hall of Famers in my mind. It's just there's certain things, or there should be, when you think of a Hall of Fame, there should be certain moments, certain plays, certain things that stick out about you, about that specific person, and Derek Jeter has a plethora of those. So it was hard pressed for me to believe why anybody wouldn't vote him in, but obviously one guy didn't, and that is my problem, is that these guys aren't necessarily held accountable for these votes. It's the same, quick aside, but it's the same, similar thing to award voting in different sports. I know, there was a big deal made a couple years ago when Steph was the first unanimous MVP. Not that it was wrong that he should have been unanimous MVP, but he was just the first one. LeBron, I think, missed it by one vote one time because some guy randomly decided to vote for Carmelo, which, I mean, good for Carmelo. He got the MVP vote, but, I mean, that year LeBron was clearly the most valuable player. I think Shaq missed it by a vote as well. Obviously, that means MJ never was a unanimous MVP when, I mean, it was clear during his prime he was the best player in basketball, even though they just stopped giving him MVP just because they were they wanted to try something new. A couple different years for some guys that had great seasons, but, obviously, again, MJ was the best player. So it's just these sports writers aren't necessarily held accountable for these votes because they don't have to explain them. And that is part of the thing that I would try to change about the Hall of Fame voting process, is I would cut it down. I think as of now they have around, at least for baseball, there's about 400. I don't remember how many there is for the other sports, but there's a healthy amount of voters involved in this. And when you have that, you have the chance for some bad apples, if you will. Just people that have an agenda, whether it's against the player, whether it's against the team he played for, certain things that can then use that power that they have to wrong a guy, if you will. I mean, obviously, most Hall of Fame players that are clear and obvious get in eventually, so it's not a big deal if they don't get in on their first try. But in my mind, all Hall of Famers, to a degree, should be unanimous. Just take Larry Walker for example. I mean, nothing changed about his numbers over the 10 years he was on the ballot. His numbers stayed exactly the same. Other people's numbers stayed more or less other people's numbers stayed exactly the same. So he's competing against the same people. The people in his era, his numbers didn't change, all that stuff. But how does a guy go from, I think he started out at 20%, even dipped a little bit below that at a certain point, to now get up to where he can jump 22% to get on the ballot? And again, he had a great career. He probably should have been in before this, but it's what happened over the course of 10 years to where he went from not being good enough to be a Hall of Famer to now being good enough to be a Hall of Famer. Do you understand? It seems weird to me because when I think of Hall of Famers, they are clear and obvious in my opinion. Especially since it's not you only find out these people's numbers and their stats and their accolades at the end of their careers. It's very easy. There's many different websites, many different databases where you can go and find these guys' stats, their awards they've won, where they finish in different award voting, things of that nature throughout their career. It's not we need to wait till the end to see. We just wait till the end to see how it all comes together. But we know, right now, we know Tom Brady has 6 Super Bowl rings. We don't need to wait till his career is done to know that. We know that Drew Brees, currently at least, leads the all-time leader in passing yards and touchdowns. We'll see if he gets passed up by Tom Brady, but as of right now, we know that. That's not something we're going to find out in a couple of years. In my mind, you already know, all right, this guy's a Hall of Famer, that guy's a Hall of Famer. You know that whenever they decide to stop playing, like Gronk. He's a guy that you know for a fact, as of this moment right now, is a Hall of Famer. There shouldn't be any debate, shouldn't have to wait for it, anything. Justin Verlander right now, one of the guys playing, he's a Hall of Famer, in my opinion, no doubt. He can go in as soon as whenever he's eligible. Mike Trout probably give it a couple more years, but he could honestly probably retire right now, and he would be considered by many good enough to be in the Hall of Fame. He wouldn't get in because he's too young and all that stuff. Obviously, doesn't have the playoff success and all that stuff, though. Not his own fault. But yeah, Hall of Fame to me is a thing that is very obvious. That's not gonna that shouldn't waver over the course of 3, 5, 10, how many ever years these guys are on the ballot. That shouldn't change. When a guy comes in, you would know. When a guy retires, is this guy a Hall of Famer? Yes or no? In my opinion. That's why the first thing I would change is, in all sports, the guys should only be on the ballots for 5 years, just because it's. I mean, think about for the NFL Hall of Fame, Drew Pearson. He's a guy he's the only member of the all-decade team of the 70s, I believe, to not be in the Hall of Fame, and that's unfortunate for him. But he played so long ago. Why is he still worrying about it, and why are we still worrying about it at this point in 2020 when he stopped playing? I'll double check, but at least over 30 years ago. You knew within 5 years of when he retired whether he was a Hall of Famer or not. In my own personal opinion. And I mean, it's just there's nothing really that's gonna at this point. What else could change people's mind in order to get him in? And unfortunately, he's kind of. I mean, obviously, he played in an era where there wasn't really that much passing, but he only had 2 1,000-yard seasons and never had double-digit touchdowns. So it's a little dicey on whether he should or shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame. But when you think of guys like T.O., who was clearly one of the best receivers ever when he retired, had to wait a couple years to get in just because guys didn't like him. That's not a thing that should be happening in sports. You shouldn't. The voters should not hold that much power to be able to be like, oh yeah, you're great and you were great, but we're just going to make you wait just because we feel like it. No, this guy's a Hall of Famer, put him in the Hall of Fame. So my first issue is that you shouldn't have to, no more than 5 years, you got to be on the ballot. At that point, within 5 years, maybe just there's a lot of guys, so it's hard to siphon through. So as you siphon through those 5 years, you'll know whether or not a guy's a Hall of Famer or not. You should have to wait that long. And also, what I believe you should do is cut the amount of voters down. You can get it down to a select panel of whether it's guys already in the Hall of Fame, which you can add to as they get added into the Hall of Fame, who who pay attention to the sport outside of when they played it, so they have a good idea of what they're talking about. And obviously, you go through and vet the best, whether it's writers, announcers, broadcasters, analysts, whoever you determine gets the vote, just so that you'll have with a tighter group of people, you'll have less chance of that kind of thing where you can have these random writers who are just going to be like, oh, I'm from New York, I don't like New England, I'm not going to vote for Tom Brady to be in the Hall of Fame just because he hurt my team so much. That's not saying that is going to happen, it shouldn't happen, but I'm saying if that did, would I be shocked? Not at all. It's just one of those things. So a tighter group of voters will allow for some of that extra stuff to where guys just hold those agendas over certain players that they don't like or they don't want to vote in on the first ballot for whatever reason. You'll be able to whittle some of those guys down. And also, I believe their vote should either be immediately publicized or the voting should be televised, so that you can. I mean, it doesn't have to be all in one night. It could be like how the NFL did the top 100 thing, where you break it down and you have guys talk about the guys who did make the team. Guys talk about guys who didn't make the team and why they made it. So if you have, I don't know, whenever they get down to their final list, whatever that final list goes, you can do like 5 a night and talk about, is this guy a Hall of Famer, yes or no? And then when you make your vote, you have to give your reasons why you say yes or why you say no. You shouldn't just be able to be like, I know some guys, like when you did like those MVP votes, you could just be like, I just thought Melo was better than LeBron this year. You can just tweet that out and just be like done. You don't have to explain it any further. No, you're not always going to be able to ask you any more questions about it. That's just like, you can just say that and that's it. And I don't think that's a good enough reasoning behind why you voted for somebody, especially for something as prestigious. I mean, that was a case of an MVP, but something as prestigious as a Hall of Fame, you should have to give a legitimate reason as to why someone should be in or should not be in. And I think that'll also help if you had that immediate thing where you can be like, where the guy has to say out of his own mouth, in his own words, why I believe this person A should be in the Hall of Fame or B should not be in the Hall of Fame. Then at least you'll be able to understand their thinking. Whether or not you agree with it is a completely separate point. But you won't have the secrecy to be able to hide behind like, oh, these unpublicized ballots, which I think is a part of the reason why these guys can get away with this kind of stuff, where they can be shiesty and just be like, oh, I'm not going to vote for Derek Jeter, and no one's going to know until like much later down the line, and by then it's too late to even matter because he's already in. Like, no, that's the thing, that if you are a person that did that, you should have to answer for that today when the ballot is publicized. You should have to give your reasoning, or even before it's publicized, you have to be able to give your reasoning and explain why, instead of just being able to hide behind. And maybe, for all we know, maybe it was a check error. Maybe he just forgot to check Derek Jeter for whatever reason. Maybe he has a legitimate reason why. Maybe he thinks the MVP thing is a legitimate reason why he shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame. And I mean, if that's at least on the first ballot, there's no reason why Derek Jeter shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame. But just like on his, he shouldn't be a unanimous vote. Let's put it that way. And if you believe that, that's perfectly fine. I mean, a lot of people have opinions that I think are wrong. I imagine there's a lot of people, now you guys out there have opinions that you hear people give their opinions on things, and you're like, no, it doesn't make any sense at all. And that's fine. That's how opinions work. They're not facts. They're opinions. This is what you believe. So if you believe that, by all means, that's completely fine. But you should have to explain that. It's just my thing. You should have to be able to explain that. People should have to explain why. The 3 people that didn't vote for Ken Griffey Jr. should have to explain why they did not vote for Ken Griffey Jr. to be in the Hall of Fame. The fact that Mariano was the first guy to be unanimous isn't his fault, like I said. But just like he's not the only person that should have been unanimous MVP. There are multiple other people that should have been in on the first ballot or unanimous. Yeah, he's in, go. And I'm saying if you cut instead of having 400 people voting, if you have the 25 best people in your opinion based on how you, whatever criteria you have, vote, then you were able to whittle some of that stuff out and shouldn't have those type of issues. And I mean, people may say, 25 is not enough or whatever, and maybe that's fair, maybe it isn't. But I just believe that if you get we say you want to bump it up to 50. If you get the 50 best people to vote on this stuff, that you, or like the public, the media, whoever believes are the best people, that are most knowledgeable people about this sport, to vote on this thing, about who should and shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame, then that's what I think you should do. I mean, even when you look at the Heisman, all the past Heisman people can vote, and I mean, that's the thing. Again, it's an in-season award, it's not the Hall of Fame, but there's no way all the Heisman voters that are alive watch every college football game to know for a fact who should and shouldn't be the Heisman winner that year. Usually, do they get it right? Yes, because it's clear and obvious. And that's my point. When things are clear and obvious, like Derek Jeter being a Hall of Famer, then they should just be that. There shouldn't be any. There should be nothing that should get in the way of that. You should just be like, yes, this guy's a Hall of Famer. Boom, he goes in the first try. And that's my thing. I don't understand. Someone made a good point, because I saw this on Twitter, but someone made a good point. It's just like, I mean, he was arguing for just a once and for all, just kind of just like 1 year, whenever like that 4 or 5 year gap is up. Is this person a Hall of Famer? Yes, no. Okay, boom, he's in. No, all right, he's not in. And that's kind of, I'll give it 5 years just because of the amount of people that they may have in a given year. It might be hard to whittle it down to how many ever. Also, that's another thing. Just there should be no limit. Put in as many people that year that you believe are good enough. If that year there's only 2, cool. If the next year there's 10, cool. The same thing. Which all depends on when people retire and all that stuff. But like I said, you shouldn't just be like, oh, we have to get this down to, or we can only vote for a maximum of X. That's like, that also doesn't make any sense to me, because like, if a guy's a Hall of Famer, he's a Hall of Famer. He's not like, there's no like, oh, he's the 6th most qualified Hall of Famer in this list, on the list of finalists this year. Like, no, that's foolish to me. Is either he is or he isn't. So I'm saying, to only be able to vote for, I think basically you can only vote for 5, or like in football, you usually try to get it down to like 10 or whatever, something like that. And they don't, like I'm saying, there's either the guy's a Hall of Famer or he's not. So that's what I'm saying. That stuff is, that's another thing I would change, is there's no limit. If there's a year, like I said, there's a year where there's only one guy good enough to get into the Hall of Fame. If there's a year where there's no guys good enough to get in the Hall of Fame, all right, that's completely fine. That happens. Not every how many ever years. Not every year is there a surefire Hall of Famer that is eligible for the ballot. So I understand why there may be years where no one gets voted in. But I'm saying, if there are 10 worthy candidates that year, all right, vote all 10 of them. If you're 5, cool. 2, whatever, cool. Well, like I'm saying, the same thing. But like I said, I think these different sports need to adjust the way they do their Hall of Fames, because making people wait around for 5, 10, how many ever years just to hear their name called, when you know for a fact they're a Hall of Fame, and just making them wait just to make them wait because the writers have that kind of power, is dumb to me. And I think that's something that we should find a way to do away with. And also, when people make, like I said, make unpopular, I don't want to say dumb, but make unpopular votes, again, that's completely fine, but just have them explain why. That's all. Don't just be like, oh, one person didn't vote for Derek Jeter, and then like we're just like left trying to figure out who that person is, and we won't find out for a while, and then like I said, by then no one will even care, and that's kind of the point. And I just think, no, just like, if you believe that, fine. Everyone's entitled to their own opinion, but just be able to, you should be forced to explain why. So that's how I feel about Hall of Fame voting. Those are the couple changes that I would make. Again, you may agree, you may disagree, but that's just my own personal belief. Just because I always thought it was dumb how they make people wait just because, or they pick and choose like who deserves to be in on the first list. It's just like, if you're a Hall of Famer when you retire, you're a Hall of Fame when you retire. Like there's no question about it. And, like, you shouldn't have to wait till the fourth or 5th year on the ballot to be in. Like, either you're in or you're not. In my opinion, you know a Hall of Famer when you're watching them play. You know what a Hall of Famer. Everyone knows what a Hall of Famer looks like based on the criteria of who gets in and who doesn't. So that shouldn't be something that we have to worry about. But that's just my own personal opinion. So after this next break, we are going to switch gears and talk about a player in the NBA who has taken a giant step forward and cemented himself as one of the best players in the league with one of his star players out of the lineup. You guys may know who I'm talking about, but if you don't, I'll inform you right after this break.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
We are back here again on the GSMC Sports Podcast presented by GSMC Podcast Network. So, if you did not know who I was talking about, I'm referring to none other than the Fresh Prince himself, one Benjamin Simmons. And now, we talked about here a little while ago, a few episodes ago, when Embiid got hurt, how big of a moment this was for not only Ben Simmons, but for the Sixers as a whole, and Brett Brown. Just to show that they are capable of playing well without their best player, in many people's eyes. I mean, it's a toss-up between Ben and Embiid, but to most people, the majority of people would say that, Embiid is the best player, and I would be hard-pressed to argue. I mean, he's a guy who's 7 feet tall, can dribble, can shoot, can post up, can play great defense. I mean, he's a great all-around player. So missing him is and was going to be a big deal for the Sixers. But what has happened since he's been out is Ben Simmons has elevated himself and has led because the last game he played, Embiid, was January 6th, I believe, against the Thunder. That was the last game in which he played, and so they've played in 7 games without him, and they are 5-2 over that stretch. They're coming off of 4 straight wins. I mean, 2 of those were against the Nets, who have been a little up and down. One's against the Bulls, one against the Knicks. So not exactly a star-studded lineup of teams, and then also they have the Raptors on Wednesday, and then they play the Lakers on Saturday. So those are 2 good teams, but they've beaten the Celtics in this span, and obviously we saw what the Celtics just did to the Lakers on Monday. So even the Celtics are a very good team. So there's nothing else, nothing to laugh at in terms of that win against the Celtics team, but in these 7 games since he's been out, he being Embiid, Ben Simmons has stepped his game up to even the level, and as a whole the Sixers have. I mean, obviously the one good thing with Embiid being out is that it allows the Sixers to play a more I'm trying to think of the word, faster pace, if you will. With Ben out there with no Embiid, he can be able to get the ball, push up the floor, either get to the rim himself or find guys on fast break, find shooters around the 3-point line for transition threes. They're able to. There's no one necessarily. They can go like 5 out. With Horford being the center there, because he can. Not that Embiid can't shoot threes, but obviously he's more effective when he has the ball closer to the basket, and obviously that hurts Ben Simmons because he can't shoot right now, or he's choosing not to shoot. I'm not saying he necessarily can or cannot, but obviously that's not a big part of his game at the moment. So because of that, his defenders sag off, and the defense in general kind of sags off of him whenever they play, and then obviously that congests things for Embiid whenever he's in there and gets the ball into the post when Ben Simmons is on his side of the court. So the way in which they're able to play with Embiid out is different, and that change is one that I wasn't sure Brett Brown was going to make. I mean, obviously, he knows better than all of us do what Ben is good and what he isn't good at. So you would think he'd be able to utilize that, but obviously they've had some struggles at times with both of them on the court together, Embiid and Simmons. But again, with Embiid out, they're able to play and cater to the style of offense that is most useful for Ben, and it's paying dividends. Obviously, I mean, the last game against the Nets, he had a 34-point triple-double. It was great. 34, I think it was 15 and 12. I'm gonna double check for you guys, but yeah, he had a great game. He was, like I said, he was great. And then obviously another thing that's been impressive from not only just him, but the Sixers as a whole with Embiid, just the play of their defense. I mean, in that game, late in that game, when the Nets were able to come back and cut the lead down to 1, I mean, they just put the clamps on them. I mean, it was just one of those things where, like, if and when this Philadelphia decides they want to try on the defense, you're not scoring. Basically, they just have, especially with obviously with Ben out there being able to guard. If you go small, all 5 positions, you got Josh Richardson who's got length. You got Thibault, who's as good of a defender as a rookie as there is in the league. Tobias, who isn't necessarily known for his defense, but again, he's long and athletic. And then Horford, who's a very solid defender as well. So you have 5 very capable defenders, both and all with great athleticism. So it's just hard for you to get passes, hard for you to get by people. It's hard for you to make passes. So yeah, so they with 4 minutes left in this game on Monday against the Nets, the Nets cut it to a 1-point lead. They had scored, I believe, 8 straight at this point. Yeah, they scored 8 straight to cut it to 1. And then from there, they had a shot get blocked. They missed the layup. Had a turnover out of bounds. Another shot get blocked. And then Horford hit a 3 to get it to 4. So that's 4 separate possessions. So that was, I think, as a whole, that was a span of 3 minutes. I mean, obviously the Sixers didn't score during this time either, but again, they were the team that up, so they don't have to score as much. But that's a 3-minute span where the Nets just didn't score the ball, and not all of it was just like, oh, they were missing shots. Like, no, the Sixers were making it incredibly hard for them, and leading that charge was one Ben Simmons. I mean, in that game, on top of the scoring, like I said, he had 34, 12 and 12. You also had 5 steals, 2 blocks, and I believe if you look up the advanced stats at stats.nba.com, he also had 8 deflections. Opponents were 4-14 when guarded by him in terms of field goals, and they were 1 of 7 inside the 3-point line. He forced 3 turnovers, and then he forced 3 turnovers on his own. So again, he's a guy who's not only been carrying them offensively, but has been playing all defensive team caliber defense, and that's the thing that not many people can do. Not many people can be the focal point or be the main ball handler, be the main facilitator on offense, and also lock down multiple positions on any given night. And that's kind of what you have in Ben Simmons. I mean, he was just named Eastern Conference Player of the Week for the past week, in which he played 4 games, averaged 21, 9.5 rebounds, 7.3 assists, at 20 points 4 times, and then 3 double-doubles, not triple-doubles, 3 double-doubles. And I'm saying, like, that's the kind of play that you wanted to see from Ben Simmons with Embiid out, and he's obviously showcasing himself to be not only one of an all-star caliber player, one of the better players in the league, but also has provided great leadership on the defensive end that has helped the Sixers stay afloat with their main guy out. Obviously, they're still only 5th. They've moved up to 5th in the East now, but they're only 2 games back of 2nd. And they're what? Let me see. There's 6-4 in their last 10. But like I said, they're 5-2 in their last 7 with Embiid out. On a 4-game winning streak heading into a game against Toronto on Wednesday. And Ben Simmons has been the driving force behind that, in my own personal opinion. Now, so they needed to have other guys step up. He can't obviously do everything on his own, but Ben Simmons has been the driving force in that, and that's kind of what they needed him to be, just to be able to showcase himself to be that kind of leader that can step up when other guys go down. Like, hey, you can have me, I'll carry us on offense and defense on any given night. And then, like I said, that's what he's doing right now, and that's great to see for not only him but for the Sixers as a whole, just because now you can find a ways to, when Embiid's come back, you can see, all right, this is where, I know another thing they've been doing more recently is having him I think they did it with Neto in the last game against the Nets, but having him be the role man, because I mean he is 6'10", he is technically a power forward, but when you have another facilitator type player in there, you can have him be the role man and not just have him handle the ball. And that's also, I think, why they've been rumored to be in on the Derrick Rose thing, because they could use another guy that can handle the ball to take away some of that stress from Ben Simmons. But I'm saying if they were able to find that, if they have that, maybe they have that in Neto or Trey Burke or whoever on their roster. If they have a guy that can handle the ball enough, you can utilize Simmons in different ways to maximize his scoring ability. Because I mean, he's a guy who can get you 20 points plus on any given night and not shoot a three-pointer, which is almost unheard of in this day and age of the NBA. So that just shows you how dominant of a force he is, and also can be, to where you know he's basically shooting the ball from inside 10 feet, and there's nothing you can really do to stop it. Once he gets to a spot, once he gets going downhill, there's not really much you can do. And that's a rare skill and a rare ability, and something that he has showcased with Embiid out. Now, like I said, this time is going to be big for Brett Brown, it's going to be big for Ben Simmons, and so far both of them have stepped up to the plate and knocked it out of the park. I mean, we'll see how much longer Embiid is out. We'll see, like I said, we'll see over the next two games when they play the Raptors and the Lakers how things go for them. But as of right now, they're doing a great job, and Ben Simmons is the one leading the charge, and that's what you wanted to see from your, whether you want to call him second best, when you call him 1B to Embiid's 1A, whatever it is. Their guys are going to need to step up, and Ben Simmons has stepped up and done it on both ends of the floor, which is probably the most impressive part of all of this, is the fact that we knew he was a good defender before, but now he's stood up to be like a Defensive Player of the Year caliber defender. And he was doing that before Embiid went out, but obviously since Embiid's out, they need a little bit even more from him on the defensive end, and he's stepped up to the plate, like I said, and knocked it out of the park. So that's been great to see. And man, if you're a Sixers fan, if you're just a fan of basketball and want to see the best players do well, this has been a nice sight. And speaking of nice sights, there have been a couple of players this year who were thought of as castaways, thought of as underperformers, thought of as people who were over the hill, if you will, before the season started, and they have used the season to remind everybody just who they are and what they are capable of. And now there's a couple of them, and I will talk about those guys right after this break.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red-hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's gsmcpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
We are back here again on the GSMC Sports Podcast, like GSMC Podcast Network. So, the first person I'm going to talk about that's using this season as a quote-unquote revenge tour, if you will, has been CP3, Chris Paul. I mean, he's a guy who, for all intents and purposes, was kind of a scapegoat for the Rockets' downfall the past couple years. Obviously, he got hurt in the 2017 playoffs. That had he not gotten hurt, many people believe that they could have beaten the Warriors that year. Obviously, if in that Game 7 they make just a below average amount of threes as opposed to missing 27 in a row, they probably win. And then the Chris Paul injury doesn't really matter. Last year he missed some time as well, though he was healthy for the playoffs and they just weren't able to get it done. And at that point, by the end of that, KD was out, so that was even more disappointing. But yeah, so they kind of decided that they had gotten basically as far as they could go with Chris Paul on the team, and they offloaded him in order to bring in Russell Westbrook, who's obviously friends with James Harden, been friends for a very long time. Obviously, he's playing well, especially recently, but he's playing well this season, so it's not it's his fault that the Rockets are where they're at. But the Rockets' struggles have not gone away. Some of their issues are still there, are still prevalent. And it's clear that some of those things did not involve Chris Paul. While on Chris Paul's side of things, he got shipped off to OKC, kind of like if you ever watched Game of Thrones, about how they kind of shift people off to the Night's Watch, and you just kind of like let them go do their thing and just like die off. That's kind of what people thought they were doing with his career. It's like, oh, let him go ride on a rebuilding team, never is going to compete for much. Maybe he'll get traded, maybe he won't, and then he'll just like make money, and then just like that'll be it. But surprisingly, this OKC team has been very good this year. I mean, after they just had I would say miraculous win, but I mean, if you haven't been watching the Thunder at all this year, that's just what they do. They come back late in games and find ways to win. I mean, this is 17 points, I believe, was the total the highest deficit. I think they were down 15. They overcame a 15-point deficit in like the last 6 minutes and change of that game, and that's like the fourth biggest comeback for them this season. I mean, they have, I think they had what? It was like a 26, or they had a 26-point against the Bulls, a 24-point against the Grizzlies, like another big one against the Clippers. Like that's just what they do, and we'll talk about that in a second. But Chris Paul has this team firmly in a playoff spot. They're only 7th in the West right now, but as a team that many thought was going to be well within the lottery, that's definitely a big difference. They are 4.5, 5.5. Trying to do the math. 5, carry 1, 10. So they're 4.5 games up on the 8th seed, Memphis Grizzlies. They're only two games back of the 6th seed, and who is the Rockets, who they've beaten twice recently. Like I said, once in the comeback win on Monday, and then the last time they beat them pretty handedly. And then they're only they're only 2 games back to them for the 6th, and they're only 2.5 games back of Dallas for the 7th. I mean, for the 5 seed. So they're like I said, they're firmly in the playoff hunt, barring anything major happening. They should be able to make the playoffs this year, and that's a thing that many people didn't think they were going to be able to do coming to the season. And Chris Paul has been very good. He was a guy who many people thought like, oh, how were him and Shea going to work? How are him and Dennis going to work? Was he going to really be trying that hard? And he's been giving it his all his entire game. I mean, he's up until this point, he's played in every game, I believe. So we'll see if that holds up, because that was big. His big knock was the injury thing. But 44 games into their season, he's played in all of them, and he's been and that 3-guard lineup, like I said, with him, Shea, and Dennis, is one of the best 3-man lineups in the league. And just their team as a whole has been clutch this season, and he's been a leading part of that. I mean, I believe he leads the league. Not I believe. He does lead the league in terms of clutch scoring. So that's like the last 5 minutes of the game. The game is within 5 points. I'm pretty sure is the criteria for that. And he, like I said, he has the most points in the league with 103 in that scenario. His teammate, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, is tied for 6th with 72 points. Gallinari is in the top 30 with 55, and Schroeder is tied for 37th with 45 points in the clutch this season. So, as obviously Chris Paul is the main driving force for that, if you will, but he's, because of his presence, that has allowed other guys to play great in the clutch. And you could not even just argue, statistically speaking, Oklahoma City is the clutchest team in the entire NBA as of this moment. Obviously, things could change, but their offense as a whole is great. They're top 5 in the entire league in clutch moments, and field goal percentage, true shooting percentage, free throw percentage, field goal attempts, and 3-point percentage. So that's, I mean, like I said, that's extremely efficient shooting. in those moments, and that has led them to be the top overall team in offensive rating, net rating, and plus minus in those clutch scenarios, which again is a part in part because of Chris Paul's leadership. I mean, they're also great defensively in the final 5 minutes. They're first in steals, first in points off turnovers, top 6 in defensive rating. And like I said, they've had 26-point comeback against the Bulls, another 26-point, against the Grizzlies. These happened 2 nights apart. They had an 18-point comeback against the Clippers 4 days later, and that helped ruin Paul George's return to Oklahoma City. Then obviously, they had the 17-point comeback against the Rockets. So Chris Paul has been great and has been a driving force for why, at least right now, not only is OKC one of the clutchest teams in the league, or the clutchest team in the league, they're a team that seems to be able to overcome. It doesn't matter how far down they are, they're never really out of the game, and because of that, they're firmly in the playoff hunt. So that's something that not many people thought was going to happen before the year, and Chris Paul has been the leader for that team, and he's shown people that he's still very much capable of not only leading a team but doing so while he's playing well. I didn't mention this before, but his stats on the year, he's averaging. Hold on, give me a second here. I'm trying to read my handwriting. He is averaging. He's shooting like 48% from the field, 37% from 3, almost 90 from the 90 from the free throw line. He's shooting 54% on 2-pointers. He's been very great. He's been very good from the mid range this year, averaging 17 points, 5 rebounds, 6.4 assists. Like I said, he's been great, and they're a team that's been playing. The team hasn't been playing as well recently, but I mean they have 2 very good wins they're coming off of with the Rockets and Portland, and then they have their easy stretch where they take on the Magic, Hawks, Thunder. Mavs are going to be a tough one, but then the Kings and Suns. So they have a chance to even extend that lead and even possibly pass teams in the playoff race. And speaking of the Blazers, the other guy who's taken this year to go on a revenge tour of his own, if you will, has been Carmelo Anthony. Now, he was a guy who was a little bit different. I mean, a little bit the same, but a little bit different than Chris Paul is in terms of he was another guy that was cast out of Houston. For whatever reason it didn't really fit, it didn't really work, and I mean, that's definitely true. But he sat out the rest of the year. Wasn't on the team to start this year. Then obviously the Blazers picked him up because they had some injuries, and it will be interesting to see how he plays and how the team plays once they get more of their guys back from injury, whether it's Nurkic, Zach Collins, whoever. Well, not whoever, but just like when they get those 2 guys back to see what the minutes are like for Melo and how they play with him. But in the 30 games he played, he's been a big boost for them. He's averaging 16 points a game, which is 3rd on the team in scoring. He's averaging 6 rebounds, not turning the ball over like that, and shooting fairly efficiently. He's shooting 44% from the field, 37% from 3, 82% from the line. And I mean, for a guy who many people thought was done, thought couldn't even play in the league, he's been not only just a nice surprise, but just a big boost for them. He's giving them what they needed, which is, I mean, obviously more scoring. And he hasn't been, and the other thing is he hasn't been a complete liability on defense. Is he great? No, obviously, but he hasn't been just like a turnstile out there, which is a big boost for them because I mean they have their own issues defensively, and that's why the Portland the Trailblazers haven't been as good this year as they would have liked. But a lot of that hasn't had to do with Melo. I mean, he's since he's gotten there, he's been very good for them. Like I said, he's given them that scoring boost, even when maybe the rest of the team hasn't played up to par. He's still been great, even in some of their losses. He's still been very good. So, like I said, he's been a big boost, and he's just like more than anything, he just showed people that he is still capable of playing NBA caliber offense, and then he's just an NBA player as all, which was something that not many people were sure of heading into the season, or even after last season. They were just like, they thought this was probably it for him. He was never going to be able to make it back into the league, and now at the very least, he's showing himself to be a person that is capable of being on a roster in a specific role, yes, but I mean, and most people at the end of their careers, especially when he's 35 now, most people at this point are role players to a degree. No, very, very, very few people are LeBron James, where he can be the best player on a team at 35 years old on a team that's quite good. Like, not that many people are capable of that. And is Melo capable of that? No, but in the specific role, he can be very effective, and that's what he's been for the Blazers. Obviously, they will hope for, more team success the rest of the way. And we'll see, like I said, once they start getting pieces back from injury, if their team improves, which it should. I know they haven't played up to their standard as to where they thought they could be this year. They're the 10 seed right now, but they're only 2 games back at 8. So, like I said, they can still sneak their way into the playoffs, and that'd be cool just to get some playoff Melo at the end of the season, just to see what he's capable of there. I know the last time with the Thunder, it really didn't go that great for him. But yeah, I'm happy for him. He's been another player that's kind of showed himself to still be capable of doing something, contributing to a good team. And the last player that I want to talk about, speaking of LeBron's team, has been Dwight Howard. He's one of the bigger surprises. I mean, obviously, this year he's finally healthy, which he hadn't been recently. In the recent years, he's had a couple injury-riddled years, and even his last stint with the Lakers was very injury-riddled. That's why it was so surprising that he not only came back there, but too many people came back there and played so well. But like I said, a part of that was due to his injuries, so that hurt him. He's been great. Another guy who, at this point, is filling a specific role and doing it very well. He's been a backup big for them. Comes off the bench. Obviously, he's not doing a whole lot of scoring and all that stuff, but he's given them 7 points a game, 7 rebounds, a block and a half a game. He's shooting 72% from the field. He's hit a couple threes this year, which have been pretty funny. Him and JaVale McGee have clearly shown off, worked on their range in practice, if you will, and they've showed it off a couple times throughout the year, which has been fun to see. But yeah, he's another guy who is capable of, if they need a bigger role from him, like against the Cavs a couple games ago, they needed something more from him, and he was able to contribute with 21 and 15, which obviously that used to be like his averages, but now he's a guy that he scored 20 points this year before. He scored 15 plus this year before, so a couple different times. So he's a guy that's been shown that if you, in this specific role where he's not asked to do too much, he's just back up big, he's going to do all the dirty work, he's going to rebound, he's going to block shots, he's going to box out, play defense, all that stuff. He can still be effective. And obviously, again, part of that is because he's finally healthy again, which he hadn't been, over the past couple of years. But that has helped him out a great deal, and that has helped the Lakers out a great deal, because they needed, especially once Boogie went down, they needed somebody that could give them some backup big minutes, and he's been that person that has been able to do that and has done it extremely well. So, I'm just happy to see him seem to be enjoying playing basketball again, seem to be enjoying playing on team again. I believe he's going to participate in the slam dunk contest, which, not something I necessarily would have asked for, but it's something that now I'm not mad at seeing. Just because, he's been a guy that's been contributing, like he's kind of rebranded his image. He seems more like a likable guy. He seems to be having fun again. So I want to see what kind of show he can put on for the fans in Chicago this year. So that's something that I did not expect, and I think many, even Lakers fans, did not expect him to come back. And obviously, is he the Dwight Howard he was in the Orlando days? No, obviously not. Again, he's a little bit older now. He wasn't expected to be, and he shouldn't be expected to be. But in what they've needed him to do, he's been great. He's been great. There's not much more you could ask for from Dwight. So that has been fun to see. All those guys, from Chris Paul, Melo, Dwight, it's just been great to see them kind of come back and dispel some of the narratives about them that many people had heading into the season. And obviously, the season's not over. It's only halfway over. There's still a lot of basketball left to be played, and maybe even into the playoffs for some of these teams. So they can continue to change that narrative around them. But as of right now, it has been great to see those guys kind of excel in the different roles they needed to be in for their different teams. So, and speaking of excelling, then in my next segment, I'm going to talk about, again, who I believe is the best quarterback in the league and why some people seem to have forgotten about him throughout the year and are kind of surprised that people are talking about him in this way. I mean, you guys know who it is, but if you don't, we will talk about him right after this break.
Are you looking to get your college football fix? Looking to get the latest news on your favorite school's team? The GSMC College Football Podcast is your ticket to all things college football. Join us as we talk college football from the national championship, the college rivalries, the bowl game, to the Heisman Trophy. To which conference is the best? We've got you covered for the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, the Pac-12, ACC, and everything in between. Download the GSMC College Football Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
We are back here again on the GSMC Sports Podcast, presented by GSMC Podcast Network. So, Patrick, good old Patrick Mahomes. I feel like people were so focused on Lamar this year that we forgot, not me, but as a collective, we forgot how good Patrick Mahomes is, and he's taken these playoffs to remind us. He's taking these playoffs to remind us, and I understand that a lot of sports and a lot of society as a whole is what have you done for me lately? There's a lot of recency bias. We move on to the next big thing very soon. I mean, think about the Bucks. No one's even known. I mean, I don't say no one's talking about the Bucks. People are talking about how good they're doing, but it's not. Giannis and the Bucks doing well is not a big news story anymore because we moved on to Luka, we moved on to the Lakers being good, we moved on to other people, other things, and I think that's kind of what happened. What we did with Patrick Mahomes this year. He got hurt a couple games, was beat up in some other games, missed some games, and we just became so infatuated with Lamar that we are now, some people with platforms are making blasphemous statements about him. I was watching a couple different shows, whether it's post game, after the championship games, or just the past couple days on various networks, and people are saying things about. Well, people are just like talking. People were making comments about people saying that Mahomes is the best player in football. Let's put it that way. I know that's something that I said a little bit in passing, but it's still something I believe on the last episode, and so. It's just something that I thought that most people believed. I didn't realize that this was a very hotly debated topic. But yeah, I don't really think there's much of an argument that Mahomes is the best quarterback in football going right now. I just don't see. I'd be very hard pressed to believe anyone else. Now, there's a difference between the best quarterback and the best season. And I think that's where people are getting it confused. Did Mahomes have a better season than Lamar? No, not at all. Lamar led the league in touchdown passes. His team went 14-2. They got the 1 seed ahead of the Chiefs, who got the 2 seed. Mahomes missed a couple games, so that obviously hurt him. Like I said, he had to deal with when he came back with a dislocated kneecap situation. And then even before then, he had the ankle issue that kind of hurt his mobility. So he had a couple of those things to deal with. So did he have better numbers than Lamar this season? No, not at all. I mean, again, Lamar also broke the record for rushing yards in a season by a quarterback. So by all means, Lamar was the best quarterback this season. Was going to win the MVP, all that fun stuff. But that is not the same thing as being the best player in football right now. I mean, for many years. I mean, did Peyton Manning? I mean, he won a lot of MVPs, but did he win the MVP every year? No. Has Jordan won the MVP every year? No. Was LeBron won the MVP every year? No. I mean, I think Aaron Rodgers only won a couple of MVPs. I don't think he hasn't won Let me double check for you guys, but I know he only has has he not even won an MVP? Hold on. We are doing some investigative research right now. Has he not won an MVP? Oh no, I was about to say. Come on now, people. Oh yeah, he's won two. I was about to say. It didn't pop up on Pro Football Reference at first. But yeah, he's won two. And I mean, you could argue, because the last one he won was in 2014, and you could argue he's been the best quarterback in the league. Definitely at least the most talented, but the best quarterback in the league these last 4 or so years. Not the last couple of years, I'd say. The last couple of years after that, maybe not so recently, but again, being the best quarterback or player in one season does not make you the best player at your position in the game. That's not how this works. That's not how it works. Because then, if that is how it works, different sports. But if that is how it works, then Giannis is squarely ahead of LeBron, which isn't, in my opinion, factual. You could make an argument that he might be, but there's no like, oh, Giannis is definitively over LeBron because he won MVP last year. That's not how any of this stuff works. So I think that people have Patrick Mahomes confused. Now, when you look back at his season this year, he still threw for over 4,000 yards. Still threw 26 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, which for him is that a notch below where he was at last year when he threw for 50 touchdowns and 5,000 yards? Yes. But did he have a bad season by any stretch? No. Not at all. Many teams would have wished that their quarterback could have that season, as well as many teams wishing that Patrick Mahomes was their quarterback. I think there's a legitimate case that you could ask all 31 other teams, and at least 28 of them were just giving him, would trade for him straight up, and I think the couple teams the Ravens would have to think about it. The Texans probably would have to think about it. Seattle might have to think about it. And then maybe the Eagles do not. I don't think. And again, I think Mahomes is better than all of these guys, but just I'm saying that they might just like what they have with their quarterbacks. But every other team, 100%. Aaron Rodgers, they would chip him out of Green Bay on the first thing smoking for Patrick Mahomes. I promise you. Patriots, Tom Brady's a free agent. They would take him in a heartbeat. I'm pretty sure the Saints and Sean Payton wanted to trade up for Mahomes in the draft beforehand, so I can tell you they'd want him. Especially if you have to play in the Dome 8 times a year. Oh my goodness. The numbers would be ungodly. But yeah, so I'm saying there's a lot of teams. So I'm saying if that many teams would willingly give up their quarterback for Patrick Mahomes, then that tells you how good he is and how good I imagine people think he is. And I think that that's kind of where the issue comes in, is that many people believe that, just many people forgot how good he was. Not only just last year, but how good he was this year as well. I know I saw some clips from Deion Sanders' show, Game Day Prime, and he was talking about how, I think Chris Rose said that he's the best player in the league. There was some pushback on it, and how it's Lamar, and we're just saying that because he played today, and all that stuff. Which we're talking about the players that are playing right now. We're not talking about Lamar Jackson because he's not in the AFC Championship game, and he didn't win that game and get his team to the Super Bowl. Nor did he throw for 8 touchdowns combined in 2 playoff games, add in a rushing touchdown, and lead his team twice from double-digit deficits, once down 24-0, and against Tennessee he was down multiple times by 10, led his team to wins in both those games pretty comfortably. Also, Lamar had a chance to beat the same Titans team to play the Chiefs in the AFC Championship game, and he was unable to get the job done. Was it completely his fault? No, but he was unable to get the job done. Also, earlier this season, though it was in Arrowhead, I'm pretty sure, the Ravens lost to the Chiefs. They tried to come back there at the end, but they lost. That was their first loss of the season. So even just head-to-head, Mahomes beat him. And I thought, I'm not a big quarterback wins matters kind of guy, but I thought the way the sports world work, winning is supposed to factor in. It's supposed to mean something. So if you, in your second year in the league, first year as a starter, throw for 5,000 yards, 50 touchdowns, and win MVP, are a D Ford lining up on the right side of the line away from going to the Super Bowl last year against the Patriots, where you would have beat them. And then this year you made it to the Super Bowl, so that there's a legitimate argument that the Chiefs should be heading back to the Super Bowl for the second time in a row and possibly trying to defend their championship, because I think they had a very good chance to beat the Rams. So I'm saying, if that's the case and Mahomes has been the quarterback for those two teams, why should there not be an argument that he's the best quarterback in the league? I guess I just want someone to answer that for me. Like, why is that an improper argument if I say that? The man should be heading. There's a legitimate case he would have gone to the Super Bowl twice in 2 years as a starter. Now, will they win or lose? That's a different. Will they would have won or lost last year? I think they would have won. I mean, they played the Rams earlier in the year. That was a great game in LA, and we don't know for a fact. I think the game would have been more entertaining. Let me tell you that. That Super Bowl would have been more entertaining if it was Chiefs Rams than with the Chiefs Patriots. Patriots Rams. Excuse me. But yeah, so okay, there's no guarantee he wins that game. Cool, but at the very least, there's a legitimate argument that he should be going to the Super Bowl for the second time in 2 years as a starter in his first 3 years in the league. Like, how is that not enough to stake his claim as the best quarterback currently playing? I mean, he's easily the most talented. He does things every game in terms of with his arm that very few, if any, other quarterbacks could do. I mean, if you run down some of the highlights from that game, even some of the plays that didn't count were amazing. That throw he had to Kelsey in the back of the end zone, where I'm still not sure he didn't get his feet down. But I think there was a defensive penalty on it, so they didn't really matter. But I'm still not certain that Kelsey didn't get his feet down. That shouldn't have been like a 30-yard touchdown pass. Then also you had the great run. I mean, Lamar's had his share of great runs this year. None of them in the AFC Championship game to give his team the lead before halftime. He had the great throw deep on the run to Sammy Watkins. I mean, was he open? Yes, but he still had a nice throw. He had the nice laser for Tyreek Hill's second touchdown catch, excuse me. And then, like I said, divisional round, he threw 5 touchdowns, over 300 yards. So again, it's not like he's, no offense to Jimmy G, but it's not like he's out there being Jimmy G and throwing less than 30 passes combined in 2 games, and he's leading his team to the Super Bowl. Okay, yeah, if that's what happened, and you want to say he's the best quarterback in the league, all right, we might have a different argument. But he's been the driving force for his team to get to the Super Bowl. So why is it absurd to say that? And I know another point people tried to make was that all the weapons he has, and if you switch the teams, Lamar, the Chiefs would be like, I saw someone say they'd be 18-0. I mean, that's foolish. But blah blah. Again, no one was saying this when the Ravens were smoking every team in their path on the way to the 1 seed in the AFC. And also, when you look at the pieces and how they match up, they just match up differently. Mark Ingram is better than every running back that the Chiefs currently have. Travis Kelce is the better tight end, but they have, I don't even know who the backup tight end for Kansas City is. He doesn't even come in. But then they have 3 good tight ends, and Mark Andrews, who made the Pro Bowl this year, so no slouch. Nick Boyle and Hayden Hurst. All 3 are great. I think the Ravens as a team led the league in Pro Bowl. Like people that made it to the Pro Bowl. So it's not the team. It's not Lamar was just carrying the team on his back by himself. Like, that defense was good. That line is good. Like, they have good people. Receiver wise, all right, I'll give you that. Do they have a Tyreek Hill? No. Do they have a Sammy Watkins? No. But again, Sammy Watkins, just because he was a high pick, does not make him a great player. He's been inconsistent throughout his entire career. He's on his 3rd team. He's been inconsistent even this year. He hadn't had a touchdown catch since week 1. Hadn't had over 100 yards since week 1. So again, it's not like Sammy Watkins is some sort of all-pro out there. He's also missed, I believe, 4 games this year. Even if it's not 4, he's missed a couple games this year. So he's not out there every week. Again, then you have to count for Sammy Watkins when he's out there, yes, but it's not like Mahomes has Tyreek Hill and DeAndre Hopkins out there, they still on the ball too. Like, no, Sammy Watkins is cool, but like, he's not anything too special. And then like people are like, oh, McCall Hardman, blah blah blah. The Ravens tried to get McCole Hardman in the first round with Hollywood Brown. It didn't work out as well. He's been banged up for other things. I mean, he's been good when he's played, but he's been banged up a little bit this year. So we're going to hold Mahomes against Mahomes and McCole Hardman stayed healthy? Like, that's his fault? Because the Ravens tried that. They got their speed guy, their young speed guy in Hollywood Brown to pair with Lamar. So I don't like the McCole Hardman argument is where I was like, all right, you guys are just making stuff up now. Because the Ravens legitimately tried to do that. They drafted a receiver in the first round. Like, it's not like they just it's not they just have him out there with practice squad guys. And then on top of that, another thing I saw was just like the Alex Smith, like, oh, this team was just as good with Alex Smith, blah blah blah. One, the team never made the AFC Championship game with Alex Smith. Two, Alex Smith's last year they went 9-6 with him as a starter. I believe they went 10-6 overall because Mahomes, I think, won the last game. We started Week 17. And he threw for like 4,000 yards, 26 touchdowns, and 5 picks. I believe that last year in 2017. So, what Mahomes had in a down year was like a peak Alex Smith year. So, make with that what you will. And also, they lost in the first round, in the wild card round to the Titans, different Titans team, but still lost to the Titans, in which they had an 18-point lead in Arrowhead, blew it, let Mariota come back on them, a guy who wasn't even starting in this game because he got benched. And whether he deserved it or not, whatever. But they had multiple great years with Alex Smith at the helm. I'm not going to deny that. But they never really amounted to all that much. I think they made it past the divisional round one time. They had multiple disappointing losses in that time with Alex Smith as a starter. And I believe the one year in which they made it past the divisional round, that was the year where the Texans had their quarterback hurt, and I think they started TJ Yates. Oh, I started Brian Hoyer. They started against Brian Hoyer, and he threw 4 picks. So that's the one playoff win that they have with Alex Smith as a quarterback. Now, again, mind you, when Mahomes took over, he threw for 5,000 yards and 50 touchdowns with basically the same pieces that Alex Smith had. I don't think they had Sammy Watkins yet. They got him this year. So the same pieces. Plus, Alex Smith has Kareem Hunt. Mahomes only got him for like a half season before he got suspended, and then they had to cut him and all that stuff. So you got a full year of healthy Kareem Hunt as well, on top of that. But people were trying to tell you that, oh, Alex Smith was just as good with the Chiefs. Like, come on. Like, it's just like, I am just a person that appreciates talent when I see it. And I feel like we're knocking Mahomes just because he's so good that we just assume everyone around him is so good. Like, again, Sammy Watkins on his third team. Tyreek Hill was like a 5th round pick. And again, he was good with Alex Smith, but he's been better. Travis Kelce is the one guy I'll give you. Mahomes had no effect on his success, so he was good before he got there. And has been good with him still. But again, their running game is nowhere near. I mean, I'm pretty sure at least a couple of those years he had Jamal Charles too. So it's not like at no point has, other than the few games with Kareem Hunt last year, at no point has Mahomes ever had a running back as good as anybody that Alex Smith had, and yet he hasn't needed it because he's just that good. So yeah, I think people just forgot about Mahomes, and now he's reminding them, and then they're like shocked that he's playing this well. And I'm like, no, this is who he is. If you paid attention, you would know that this is what he is and what he's capable of. So again, no knock on Lamar. I love Lamar. He's going to be a great quarterback. I imagine if he works on his passing, but he's obviously superior as a runner, but he's not even. And Mahomes is not a bad runner. He's just not Lamar Jackson, but he's not even close as a passer, and that's okay. Most people aren't as good as a passer as Mahomes is. So again, there's no knock on them, but it's just I was shocked by so many people that were disparaging Mahomes and disparaging anyone that said he was the best quarterback in the league. I thought that was clear before the season because again he won MVP last year, so it's not like he just came out of nowhere. But even when he played this year, he was still great when he was healthy. And obviously he's healthy now, and you see the end results. So that's my take on that. Mahomes, best quarterback in the league. You can disagree if you wish, but I still believe that Mahomes is the best quarterback in the league and probably will go down as... I mean, he's as one of the most talented quarterbacks we've ever seen. Greatest, that's a different story. We have to win Super Bowls and all that stuff. But most talented, there's an argument that he might already be that right now. And he may very well go down as that before his career is over. So, after this next break, we're going to talk about some rule changes. The Pro Bowl's coming up this weekend, and they're testing out a new rule with onside kicks. And while I don't necessarily like that specific rule, it got me thinking of some other rule changes I don't want to see in the NFL. And I'm going to tell them to you guys, see what you guys think. So we're going to talk about that right after this break.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC, Invicta FC, Bellator, and one championship. We got the fights covered. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts. Past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
So if you didn't know, the rule that the NFL is testing out in the Pro Bowl is just an alternative to onside kicks. So by that I mean, if you haven't noticed this year, but just overall, since they changed the rule in terms of where you can't get a running start before onside kicks anymore, they're basically become extinct. They're just very few, if any, people can ever even get them. And I mean, I think the Falcons, the kicker for the Falcons, he was able to get people to recover some, and that was cool. But throughout the year, throughout the years, it's been a thing that hasn't really happened much. So that was one rule change I thought, and it got me thinking. I'm like, oh, okay, because what they're going to do is instead, if you wanted to do an onside kick in the Pro Bowl, instead of just doing because they already didn't have kickoffs, which again makes sense. There's not really any special teams guys. You don't want star players getting hurt on special teams. So if you want to do an onside kick, the coach can decide if he wants to try to maintain possession of the ball after a score by going for it on 4th and 15 on his own 25-yard line. And then if it's successful, then they get it. Then you get to keep the ball and you drive. You have your own drive. And then if you don't, then wherever the dead ball spot is where the other team gets the ball back. So, do I think they would ever implement this in a real game? At least no. But I think if they did do it, let's just move it up a little bit. So still have it be at the 35 where the normal kickoffs are. But like I say, it still be the 4th and 15, and that way, if a guy or maybe even I don't want to say the I kind of almost want to say the 40, just because normally if a team were to recover the onside kick, they'd get it around the 45-yard line. So if you give it to a team at the 35 or 25, they're already in field goal range. So that seems like a disservice. Though I guess it's the gamble that you risk when you would take this thing. But I think just move it up to 35, maybe 40. Do the same 4th and 15 thing. I think that's a good. And I think that's a decent option, just because if you're a team like the Chiefs, is Patrick Mahomes going for it on 4th and 15 with Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce out there a better alternative than hoping your kicker can get it to bounce right and you are able to cover an onside kick? In my opinion, yes. So I think it's more worthwhile to try that. So I think it's not something I think they will ever implement, but if they were to implement it, I think that's kind of the way they would do it. Just move it up a little bit so that's about at the 35-40. Still do it 4th and 15, but I think it's also not a bad idea. Like I said, most teams, most like since they've changed the rule, like very few, if any, onside kicks have even been recovered just because it's too hard for a guy to run down there fast enough in the 10-yard with no running start. Because he can't move to the ball's kicked, and then by then the other team's already moving for the ball, and then like I said, very few people are fast enough to get there in a time, and you'd have to get it to bounce perfectly, and that's very hard to do with an oblong ball. So we get it to bounce exactly the way you want it in order to make it advantageous for your own team to recover it. So that's what I'm saying. It's the onside kick has kind of almost become obsolete because it's like, what's the point? I mean, people try it when they have to, but it's like you almost know that you're not going to get it. So I think this is the better alternative. All right, you got a 4th and 15, draw up some sort of, not draw up, but like call some sort of play, create some sort of play, and take your chances. I think that's probably a better case scenario, in my own opinion. But so that's just one rule I think they should change. The other rule is obviously the overtime rule. That's something they should have been. They changed it already, but even still, with the fact that if you just score a touchdown, you don't get the ball back, I don't think that's the way you should be done. I mean, these guys are professionals. I understand that. So if you're a professional, just make a stop on defense. That's cool. But at the same time, I still don't think it's right that only one, like, there's a chance that your offense never gets back on the field if you don't win the coin toss. So basically, it's all up to luck. It's like, all right, whoever gets the coin toss, right, has a better chance of winning the game because if they score a touchdown, the other team doesn't even get the chance to get the ball. So I would do it how they do it in college, but just again move it back. So don't put it at the 25 because at the 25, even with the issues that kickers have had in recent years, with even kicking just extra points than even field goals in general. I guess if you don't get any yards with this, like a 42-ish yard field goal, which has no guarantee at this moment right now, but you're an NFL kicker, you think they should be able to make a 40-yard field goal. So I would move it back to their opponent's 40. So all right, if you don't get any yards, then you have the chance to punt and try to pin them deep, and then play defense, and maybe go field position from there. And then if you do get enough yards, you're within range to attempt a 50+ yard field goal, or maybe you go for it on 4th down. That's even better. But yes, I would move it back to the 40 because even if you had it like the 30 or 35, it's still, with no yardage lost, that's still a 52-yard field goal. NFL kickers can make 52-yard field goals, so I don't want to make it too easy on them. You got to make them work a little bit. So I'd move it back to the 40 and just do it like overtime. Like, all right, do it like college. Excuse me, not overtime. So then, like, all right, you get the ball off at the 40, you go see whatever happens. If you score a touchdown, cool. The other team has a chance to score a touchdown as well once you get the ball back. And I said, instead of doing a 3rd overtime and make it 2nd overtime, you start out to go for 2. Just like, again, so it doesn't go on forever. But yeah, because I think like 3rd overtime is good for college because, like I said, these players aren't as good and the kickers aren't as good, so there's no guarantee they'll score again. But I would have it. I mean, honestly, you could probably almost have it after the first touchdown, go for 2. You have to go for 2. But then again, I don't want to take kickers completely out of it because, again, there's no guarantee that these kickers make these extra points nowadays. So I think I give a 2nd overtime where you have to go for 2, just so, like I said, just so it's not, you're just not kicking extra points back and forth forever. But yeah, that's how I would do that overtime because, again, I still don't think it doesn't make any sense how even with the way they changed it, where they moved it to where, because before it was just a field goal and that was foolish. But then they moved to like, all right, if you score a touchdown first, then you have to. If you score a touchdown first, then you win, and then if you kick a field goal, then you have to kick it back off to them. But then, and again, also this eliminates kickoff, so kind of also the thing that they're trying to make it safer on kickoffs, and also there's basically no kickoffs anymore. Teams just like kick it into the end zone, or teams barely even run it out. So it's just like, all right, we can just do away with that in overtime. There's no need for it. Just give teams the ball at the 40, let them go at it. So that's what I would do there. And then my last rule change that I would implement is we have to change the pass interference rule, in my opinion. The spot foul thing is such a disaster. Like, you're just rewarding quarterbacks for making bad throws. Or you're rewarding There's basically just there's no. I understand you're trying to dissuade pass interference on the defensive side, but it's too hard when you're running a route deep. You can't see the ball. Then a guy either purposely or just by accident underthrows the ball. The receiver runs back into you, and you get called for pass interference just because the throw was so bad that you're technically impeding his progress. But he was never going to get to the ball anyway, because the ball was so underthrown. And then all of a sudden now a team just gains 50 yards of field position for no reason. So I don't think it should be college-wise, because college-wise is 15, and that's too little. Because then again, corners and safeties would just go out and grab, hit guys, whatever, just to not give up a touchdown. So I'd move it to where it's 25 yards, just so that it's still a big enough penalty if you get it. And then obviously inside the 20, whatever, it's half the distance, how it is the same way. No, I guess no, because I think it's still a spot foul. So, so take that back. I still just have to be 25 yards regardless. Just because I think, and then if it's in the end zone, move it to move it back to the 5. No, okay, yeah. No, I guess you can't do that, because if you were inside the 5 and then do pass interference, then that would look weird. Oh, that's a good point. I have to think about that, but I'll think about that one. I'll get back to you guys on that. But I would take it away from being a spot foul, because again, that's just you're giving too much credit to the offense for them potentially making a bad play, whether it's a bad throw, bad decision, whatever. You're rewarding them for that. And you're just over penalizing the defense to where if you just bump into a guy as you're trying to play the ball and you just don't turn your head enough, in the opinion of the referee, then you just automatically may give up 30, 40, even 50 yards of field position. And I was like, it seems like a bit. I understand most of the rules are designed for the offense, but that seems a bit extreme. So again, move it to 25 yards, so still a good enough chunk of yardage, is still a decent enough penalty, but it's just not, like I said, just not that spot foul where I always hate that if you get pass interference and you're just rewarding the team 20, 30, 40 yards of field position just for, again, in what many cases may very well be a bad throw. The guy makes a bad throw and he's bailed out for 40 yards of field position. So, like I said, the college one that's 15 is too little, just because then corners and safeties and teams will be coaching up their guys to just grab guys. If you know you're going to get beat for a 30, 40 yard completion, just grab the guy and then only be 15. So 25 yards is enough, I feel to where it would dissuade guys from doing that. Intentionally, at least. Obviously there's always pass interference, even when it was a spot foul. But that would dissuade guys from just being all right, I'm 20 yards down the field, I'm just going to tackle this guy. Or I'm 40 yards down the field, I'm just going to tackle this guy. I only know it's going to be 15 kind of thing. I think 25 is a nice little middle ground. And then I guess in the end zone you can still put it at the 2. Yeah, that's probably fine. But just anywhere else, 25 yards. And that's how I feel about that. You guys maybe have some of your own suggestions, I imagine. I mean, rule changes are a thing that have always been talked about or always discussed. So I know you guys probably have some of your own thoughts of those. So I am more than welcome to hear from you what you guys think about my rule changes and also what you guys have in mind for your own rule changes. So, but that'll do it for me here today on another episode of the GSMC Sports Podcast presented by GSMC Podcast Network. As always, I want to thank you guys for listening. If you haven't already, please make sure you subscribe to the podcast. Make sure you're always on top of whenever we drop stuff. Make sure you never miss an episode. Give us a 5-star rating and review if you can. Or if you haven't already, please. It's very helpful for us. If you're on social media, we are also on social media, so you can find us wherever you are. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We can talk there. You can bounce some ideas off each other of what we think the NFL should do. We can talk about different players, different teams, different topics that you guys just want to talk about. Like I said, it's all about you guys. So whatever you guys want, we are willing to accommodate when we can. Again, I have been Chris Blades. Thank you guys for listening, And until next time, peace out.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.